a more popular playwright in his day. What? Good evening and welcome to day 24 of the 100 Days of Shakespeare event. Super excited to have you here. My name is Paul Adams from Small Crown Productions. And if you are here for the very first time, welcome. If this is not your first time, welcome back. It's great to have you here. Tonight, we are looking at one of Shakespeare's contemporaries. We're going to take a look at the life of Thomas Kyd. But if you don't know what the 100 Days of Shakespeare event is, I will pop a link up in the description here for you to jump back over to the very first video that I did as part of this series, so you can take a look where I explain that a little bit more. Or later on, once you've done hunting around a few of these videos, have a look at the link in the description below of all of these 100 Days of videos, 100 Days of Shakespeare videos. There is a link in the description to the Facebook group where we are sharing information and knowledge and resources all around Shakespeare, his life and his times. So if you're looking for a range of resources that you can tap into in one location, that could be a very interesting place for you to look. But tonight we are looking at the life of Thomas Kyd. Now, Thomas Kyd was one of Shakespeare's contemporaries and wrote possibly the most popular play of that era. Certainly considered one of the most performed plays of that era. And stick around to the end and I'll tell you what that play is. But very quickly, because there's not a lot to talk about, let's take a look at Thomas Kyd's life. So Thomas Kyd was born around the 3rd of November in 1558. So he was baptized on the 6th of November, and we know that traditionally they baptized about 3 days after the birth. So we can assume he was born around the 3rd of November. He was 6 years older than Shakespeare. So 1558, Shakespeare was born in 1564, so he had 6 years on Shakespeare. His father, Francis Kyd, was a scrivener. So a scrivener is a notary, someone that deals with contracts, basically a contract writer. So, some could argue there was a little bit of a writer in the family already, maybe something that inspired Kyd in his later work. We know he went to school, but we don't see any records of him going to university. So there's not a lot of information about the work that he did after leaving school before he became known for playwriting. There is some speculation that, he was jumping around a couple of different jobs, may have worked with his father or done work similar to his father, but ends up as a playwright working around the theatres. So no doubt, like all of the others, would have found his way into the theatre world and started doing some odd jobs around the place to work his way up through the ranks. That is, of course, an assumption because we don't actually know. Now, he was actually a friend of Christopher Marlowe, and in 1593, Thomas Kyd was arrested for, and let me get this right, suspicion of lewd and mutinous libels. So he was arrested on suspicion of lewd and mutinous writings that were stuck up on the walls of places in London. And so obviously, being mutinous or suspicion of mutinous writings, obviously not very nice to the royalty, I suspect, at the time. Again, an assumption because I don't have a copy of the writings. But he was tortured. And during the process of him being arrested and tortured, obviously investigated, papers were found in his possession. Now, he basically said that those papers were not his, and they actually belonged to Christopher Marlowe. And these papers led to Christopher Marlowe being arrested. And Marlowe was arrested on suspicions of atheism and heresy. So these papers that were found in Kyd's possession, he said actually belonged to Marlowe, and they must have gotten mixed up in his papers when he and Marlowe shared a room together for a period of time, a couple of years before. So I'm not sure if they were still living in the same premises together at the time of his arrest, I haven't been able to kind of find that bit of information, but needless to say, at some point around 1591, Kidd and Marlowe were sharing a space, and Kidd says that these papers that are actually Marlowe's ended up mixed up with some of his papers. So maybe they were, you know, in a box or in a satchel or somewhere that, you know, you might just forget about, that you hadn't realized that you had them. It's quite possible. So anyway, he said they were Marlowe's, and that actually is what led to Marlowe getting arrested. So he's tortured. He is eventually released without charge, goes on to write another play called Cornelia, but dies the following year in 1594 at the age of 35. So here we are with Thomas Kidd writing a couple of plays that are really kind of taking off, and we'll talk about that play in a second. And Marlowe dies at 29. So here we are with Kidd at 35, Marlowe at 29, two of them writing incredible work, pushing the boundaries of the current style, yet they die early. Poor old Marlowe stabbed in the forehead. Ouch. And yet Shakespeare, who we now know and love and respect, who by many are considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest playwright of history, lives to 52. So it's amazing the difference that extra 20 odd years makes in the longevity and the development of his work. So what are the plays that I am talking about? Well, the first one that is actually considered to have inspired the work of Shakespeare, and the other play, so the first one is actually an early play of Hamlet. So he's believed to have written an early version of Hamlet, which then inspired Shakespeare to write his version. Now, the other play, which was the most performed play that I was talking about before, is The Spanish Tragedy. And what I'm going to do is tomorrow, in tomorrow's video, is actually look at the synopsis of that play and have a look at what makes it so special. So there are some things in that play that you could say inspired Shakespeare. And so the early version of Hamlet, some adaptations of ideas from The Spanish Tragedy leading into some of Shakespeare's work will be interesting to look at. So they are the two plays that he is really known for. Well, he's not really known for the early version of Hamlet. He's believed to have written it, but The Spanish Tragedy was one of the most performed plays of its day. It was super popular because it was considered to be the very first revenge tragedy. Nothing like it had been written before. Kidd broke new ground with this play, and I cannot wait to share the synopsis with you tomorrow. So tune in for that. That is it. That's it. There's not much to talk about with Kidd's life. So thank you very much for joining me. It would be great if you gave this video a like. Crush that subscribe button, smash it, punch it, whatever. I don't want to sound like one of those crazy YouTubers, but hit the damn button. And join me tomorrow for the breakdown synopsis of Thomas Kidd's The Spanish Tragedy. Thanks very much. See you then.